It's official. Alabama A&M has named their head coach, and it's not who we thought it would be going into the weekend. Oh, yeah. It's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey's over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. We're going to do things a little bit weird today. It's going to be a lot of moving pieces, but I originally, silly me, recorded so early just knowing that Ed Reed was going to be the Alabama A&M head coach. But guess what? He wasn't. It is Sam Shade. I love this hire. So how we're going to do today's episode is we'll wrap up with the segment that I recorded about why HBCU fans should not be hesitant to give Ed Reed another shot. I still think it's relevant, and I really enjoy doing that. So I'm going to put that as segment 3 instead of our lead. In segment 2, I want to look at some of the conversations that I saw after DeSean Jackson's hiring and why I realized it's not necessarily that he was the reason I was concerned. It was the aftermath that I expected and eventually did see that had me truly concerned. But let's kick this off with a little bit of an interesting conversation on why I'm surprised they didn't go with Ed Reed. Tomorrow, we're going to really dig into the Sam Shade hire. Let me say this right now, though. I love it. Let me say this right now. I love it. I met him one time in, where were we at? We were in South Carolina. So I met him one time in South Carolina, and he was a really nice, solid guy. The people he was with, really nice, solid dudes. So I really do like this hire. And he was one of the people that I threw out there. I'll talk about this in more length on Tuesday's episode. So it's just a matter of 12 hours that you got to wait. And then we'll be right back on Tuesday morning. So thank you for doing this afternoon show with me. I think we're going to continue this throughout basketball season. I think we're going to continue Monday and Friday afternoon segments or shows, just in case you were curious. But I was genuinely convinced that they were going to go with Ed Reed. The process happened is Sunday morning. I woke up. I don't know what got into me, but I was ready to get after it, man. Like I woke up, and I think within an hour, I just was set up, ready to record. I knew what I wanted to say, and I just started letting loose, right? Then I closed the computer. I go on about my day. It's Sunday. I'm trying to watch the Saints. That didn't go well for me, And I see, hey, it seems like the NFL player route is not what Alabama A&M is going to do. But Darrion already recorded. So ain't no going back. Darrion's already recorded. I only paint this picture to show you just how convinced I was. 6 o'clock rolls around, they hire Sam Shade. So now I'm sitting there thinking to myself, dang, I just recorded this episode for nothing. That's tough. Do I still want to use this? Do I want to drop it on my Instagram? What do I want to do with this clip? Decided to make it segment 3. But the reason I was so convinced wasn't just because his name was in the circle. It was because I thought that A.D. Paul A. Bryant, I thought his vision kind of aligned with going this route, some of his vision on some of his prior moves, right? So let me tell you exactly how I feel about Paul A. Bryant. And it's a very positive statement. To me, he is a guy who I thought would take this risk because I see him as aggressive. I see him as innovative. I see him as a kind of a go-getter in the sense of being a risk taker. If he sees like a high ceiling opportunity, I thought that he would do it. Where am I getting these things from? I've never met him personally, but I have seen some of his business dealings, and most importantly, how he handled the Magic City Classic. To separate and say, we're going to generate our own revenue scheme. We're going to generate something that provides us with a higher ceiling. Yes, I think it was basically a flat rate of what you're going to get with the Magic City Classic, but now we can peak. At the same time, you could valley. That's a risk-taking move. To step away from tradition in the HBCU landscape is something that is never easy to digest for a lot of people. It scares a lot of people. I think that's one of the reasons. I'm not going to say the full and make it a complete parallel, but it's one of the reasons that I think people were so concerned about Jackson State stepping away from the Southern Heritage Classic, right? The idea of bucking a trend it's very taboo. It's very taboo here. So for Paul A. Bryant to come in and say, yeah, we're not rocking with that no more. And then he's also trying to build up Alabama A&M. He's a very progressive thinker to me. This feels like a progressive coaching hire to go with Ed Reed. This feels, I still want to say innovative because it's not that many former NFL players who move on to the HBCU coaching ranks. So this is still a very relatively untapped source. Though with him being the fifth guy, the third this offseason, I could see it being copycat. So I'm on the fence on whether or not I would describe it as innovative, but the thought process of it is the same. It's a risk-taking move. It's an aggressive move. And the reason I say aggressive is not only did you leave tradition for a higher ceiling, did you see how quickly that he scooped up Don Thornton? Did you see how quickly he grabbed one of the more successful SWAC women's basketball coaches and said, you're coming here. We're moving on to, we're going to keep you in the conference, but we're going to move you over here. That was a very aggressive move, and it was one that I supported a lot. It could have resulted in you possibly getting Zay Green. It didn't, but that's okay. She went to Alabama. I see she's doing a lot of great things at Alabama, by the way. But these are aggressive moves that we've seen him make. Ed Reed would have been an aggressive hire. Because of that, I see it. I saw it as just a natural parallel. I wouldn't have predicted it, but when it was thrown out there, like, oh, yeah. And from what I hear, this is what I hear. It wasn't, oh, we don't want to go with the former player route. No, we brought multiple people in for an interview, and Sam Shade was simply the better candidate for Alabama A&M. It wasn't a situation where we were fixated on a style of coach. And I know that that's a conversation these days. It does not seem to be that. It seemed to be we let both men interview and we preferred Sam Shade. That's the way that I'm hearing, and that's the way that I look at it, right? But let me describe real quick why Ed Reed fit some of those buttons, right? Or some of those categories, I should say. When you look at the business component of a former NFL player coming to an HBCU, because at the end of the day, one thing we must realize is that is always what we are talking about. I know we try to point the finger here and there, and maybe some people really do feel like being a player for X amount of years makes you qualified to be a head coach. I don't, because there's so many other things that go into head coaching outside of just the knowledge of the game. But for the most part, the reason we like this is because of the dollars we think that it will generate, because of the interest we think it'll generate. Quite frankly, we like the Ed Reeds, DeSean Jackson, Michael Vicks, Eddie Georges, Deion Sanders of the world at HBCUs because we believe it is a huge recruiting pitch. That's what we're looking at. But if you go beyond that, there's different layers, and that's how you end up picking somebody else depending on what you value over another criteria. But from a business standpoint, Ed Reed was going to rake in dollars. Like when you're just being honest, Ed Reed at Alabama A&M would have been a cash cow. And I thought Paul A. Bryant would have went with the cash cow, and he didn't. I think he's innovative. I think he's a risk taker. I think he's aggressive, and I think he's a businessman. In all four of those categories, outside of maybe the innovation aspect, because it's happening more, specifically, he would have been third in this offseason. Outside of maybe innovation, this is a risk, it's aggressive, and it's a really good business move. But I'm proud. I don't want to say proud, like I this is what I wanted him to do. But I kind of like that he didn't go with just the business of recruiting. He went with the business of football that involves recruiting, but is way more widespread than just isolating that one factor. Now, as we push forward, I'm going to answer some of the things that I read over the weekend because I did read some comments. I laughed when I read the comments. I've already recorded this, so I can tell you, I don't think I sounded like I was humored, but I promise you, I was humored. So as we push forward, we're going to look at why Tyreek Hill's tweet about have my HBCU coaching gig ready is a perfect example of why I was scared and I was a little bit critical and skeptical of DeSean Jackson's motivations. Tyreek Hill really proved that, and we'll talk about it as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did you know Rocket Money helps you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or you thought that you were paying twice for and you didn't know about it? That's definitely happened to people. I've had some subscriptions. I'm like, dang, I'm still paying for that. I haven't used that in a few years now. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel the unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place so I don't have to go here, there, and there. Sometimes when you're trying to get a lot of things done, having them in one place is the best thing for you. So for me, the best feature was the subscription tracker. They had a bunch of features, but that was my favorite because I used it to cancel services that I wasn't paying for, such as streaming platforms that I don't use. It was good in the time, though. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions, right? And chase your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That is rocketmoney.com/locked on. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, we're in the conference bowl season. We're in the bowl season, and the conference shows are always competing for conference supremacy. So check out Locked On SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. That's where you need to be. Go ahead and go to those shows today, wherever you listen to your podcast. They was killing me, y'all. I don't know if it was you necessarily, but it's okay. I laughed at a lot of the comments that I seen that were negative because some of them, it was questioning my motivations. It was questioning my motivations or questioning the motivations of another human. Gosh, I forgive people who are not everydayers. If you're an everydayer, you would know, especially if you've been here for a while. Go check out how I talked about Art Browse's hire at Grambling. Go check out that. For any everydayer who is now an everydayer, after checking out the DeSean Jackson and wanted to see what I had to say. Or maybe you knew I was talking about him again. But overall, a lot of it was funny to me. A lot of it was ridiculous. Love to everybody who agreed. Love to everybody who disagreed and did it respectfully. Love to all of that. Some of y'all was tripping though. By the time I looked at it, I couldn't even answer any of them because I couldn't answer all of them. So I just I scrolled through and I looked at them, man. I ain't going to sit here and lie to you. I read the comments from time to time, especially when I check it out and I see 75 comments. Oh, it's kind of quick. What? Because I don't look at the numbers right away. I don't always look at the numbers of my videos. I don't always look at the comments of my videos. Not all the time. Especially because it was like Friday night and it was like Saturday morning when I found this out. But shout out to everybody who did this with respect. Anywho, one of the things. Oh, also shout out to people who told me how close Philadelphia was to Delaware. I got like a map and I was looking at it and I thought that Washington and Baltimore were a little bit closer, but shout out to y'all for telling me that it wasn't. And also shout out to saying that connection is close enough. Like I said, I'm not from there. And that's why I posed that question to you. Is that enough? And many people said, yeah, his connection to Philadelphia and how long he was in Philadelphia gives him a close enough connection to Delaware to where this makes sense. Okay, I accept that. Let me tell you my true problem. This is when I realized what it was after I put off the mic. It's not necessarily all about DeSean Jackson. And I didn't realize that until the reaction to DeSean Jackson came in and Tyreek Hill said, have my HBCU coaching gig ready. I had a problem with that. And it's not that I don't want to see these HBCUs have former NFL players. I'm not even here standing for coaches who work their way up the rank. I'm not even doing that. What I'm here for is people who don't think it's a fad, right? Like when the university thinks it's a cool thing to do, that's one thing because they're looking at their bottom line. But when the players turn coaches think it's a cool thing to do, I question things. And I think that was my question about DeSean Jackson is that I felt, and look, I'm not sitting here condemning him. People called it a rant. I said, boy, If that was a rant, I gotta go back and check out some other episodes. But my thing was, I questioned if he just thought it was the cool thing to do, because when people think it's the cool thing to do, which is what I think Tyreek Hill thinks, for the record, I'm more confident about Tyreek Hill and his reaction, and that was my problem. DeSean Jackson, people didn't say this when Eddie George was hired. People didn't say this when Deion Sanders was hired. People didn't say this when Michael Vick was hired, right? Even when Deion Sanders succeeded, it felt like more people wanted to get into it, but it wasn't just, hey, yo, had that job ready for me when I retired. It wasn't no sense of entitlement with it. It really wasn't. And maybe it's just because it's became more and more. And now we're at number 4 of the recent history. Remember, it's important to note that HBCUs have been employing former NFL players as head coaches for a while. That is something that should be remembered. But for some reason, number 4 it had a negative effect on me. And I realized what it is after I seen the response from Tyreek Hill. It's that because DeSean Jackson is somebody who is random, and this does feel like, wow, what the heck? Didn't see that coming. That's not good or bad for all the people who want to. But I think you'd be lying to yourself if you say you saw this coming unless you know him personally. So with that, and I just never put him with being a coach. And I think a lot of people felt that way. A lot of people didn't like, oh, he's going to coach. Oh, that's random. I think it led to people feeling how I feel with more privilege than I have, wanting to use that privilege. Example, Tyreek Hill. I hope that makes sense. I'll try to explain it in a different way more concise. Because I kind of figuring out how to phrase it as I'm going, because I know how I feel, but I want to make sure I put it in the best way possible. To me, DeSean Jackson is a head coach that surprised a lot of people. We didn't expect to see him as a head coach. It took a lot of people aback. I think players saw that and was like, oh, we can do it too. And my problem when people say we can do it too is that they tend to not take it as seriously. And that's my fear. My fear is not that DeSean Jackson won't be able to recruit talent, that DeSean Jackson won't be able to coach. My fear is that we see good things that lead to bad things. You know, like I think that there's certain artists. I think that there's certain artists that are so good, but they have a negative impact in the sense that everybody tries to do it like them, and they're not that, right? Like, I'm not going to say any names because I just don't feel like it, but there's artists who try to replicate sounds, and that's of everybody, but there's artists who try to replicate sounds of more popular artists, and they don't do it to a high degree. That's my fear sometimes. Or they don't take it as serious because they're like, oh, yeah, this person did it. I done seen this and this and this. And now you got 5 people you can point to, and it's like, oh, I ain't got to take the craft as seriously. And my fear is not with DeSean Jackson, who showed that he was already watching film. So, I mean, yeah, he probably will take this serious. This is not a critique of him. It's more so a critique of Tyreek Hill and people who I think feel entitled to a job. My fear is that when you think it's going to be easy, you're not going to take it serious. And that is scary. And that should be concerned for HBCUs. I think people are rightful to gatekeep. I really do. I don't think that we have to shut down the idea of HBCUs hiring NFL athletes. I'm pro it. That's the funniest thing about all the comments is I'm pro this. I just had criticism and questions and skepticism about DeSean Jackson. But you didn't hear this tone about Michael Vick. Just a week earlier, you didn't hear that. But yeah, that's what I realized. I was scared. I am scared still that DeSean Jackson and the random nature of that hiring is going to open the floodgates to people who are not going to take this craft serious. And that is a detriment. Don't tell me that HBCUs just need to be happy. Screw that. Get that out of here. Hey, you better be, man, you people are never happy. What does that mean, huh? What does that mean? What do you mean? Like, what am I supposed to be happy for? Am I supposed to be happy as a Texas Southern alum that Delaware State got DeSean Jackson? As an HBCU fan, am I supposed to be excited that DeSean Jackson is the coach of Delaware State before seeing whether or not he's a good coach? Is that the case? Because that's what it sounds like. I praised the Delaware State strategy of it all. But the idea that I'm supposed to be ecstatic about a person who has not coached yet, and I don't know what he can be as a coach. No, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. I'm not down on him as a coach. I'm not high on him as a coach. I just got to wait and see. I don't know. Maybe that's too responsible of me. I don't know. I know that was kind of condescending, but like that's how I feel. That's how I feel. Like that was crazy to me. Y'all never satisfied. What is there to be satisfied with? The elevation of profile? I'm sorry, I don't make no money off of that. I'm here for wins and losses to talk about the sport. I talked about the business of it in a segment too, but I could tell some of them didn't wait. Some of them didn't wait. And as you can tell, I really read them comments. So let me shut up. Let me stop talking about this. But in general, to be concise, DeSean Jackson, I wish him the best of luck. I really do. I have no idea what DeSean Jackson is going to be as a coach. No one really does until he gets on the field because he is inexperienced. So that question mark will linger until he proves himself. That's natural. But my problem is when I see tweets like Tyreek Hill saying, get my head coaching gig ready before I retire. And I'm not even thinking about retirement. Right? He's not even thinking about retirement. It makes me question if these folks think it's going to be easy, which is everything I said about DeSean Jackson, which may or may not apply to him. But I feel way more confident that it applies to Tyreek Hill and people like that, where it's, oh, wait a minute. Yo, I want to be here. I want to be here. I have a problem when they think it's the cool thing to do. This ain't about DeSean Jackson no more. Did I feel this way about him? Yes. This isn't about him anymore because I realize no matter how good or bad he is, that's up to be determined. I haven't seen that yet. I think it's going to lead to people thinking this is what we do. That's a problem for me. That's a problem for me just because I need to make sure they take it serious. And I have doubts that they will when they think it's the cool thing to do. That's simple. It's that simple. If you think coaching at the HBCU is cool and you want to do it, make sure you put the effort in and I have no problem. I really won't. I may question you in the beginning, but I'm gonna give you all the range to feel better. Like when week 1 starts, I'm not gonna be like, man, I don't know why DeSean Jackson wants to be a head coach. No, it's let's see what Delaware State does under DeSean Jackson. But you know what? Let's change the page. Let's move on. Let's turn the page. Because I'm sure we're gonna talk about this at another time. I know we are. As the offseason goes on, when the introductory press conference happens, we're gonna revisit it, like I said. But right now, I want to talk about this JUCO ruling and how it impacts HBCUs already and moving forward as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, what you're about to hear is a tad bit outdated. What you're about to hear is about Ed Reed being in consideration for Alabama A&M. That's not the case anymore. More so on me for recording this so early, but at the same time, it's still relevant because of this before I lay it out. I do not believe that this is the last time that Ed Reed will be mentioned in HBCU coaching conversations. With Valley still open, it might not even be the last time this year. But the relevance of this is not Ed Reed to Alabama A&M, because that's not even the premise of what I was talking about. The importance of this is that I personally think that a lot of HBCU fans are ready to reject the idea of Ed Reed at any HBCU. And I don't necessarily think that that's the stance we should have. That's the conversation I want to display. And then we'll wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. And Ed Reed is in the mix for the Alabama A&M job. And me personally, I believe he deserves another shot. So let's start there. Why do people think Ed Reed does not deserve a shot to have a relationship with HBCUs? If he weren't to go been the coach of Alabama Birmingham, I don't think anybody's tripping. I don't think anybody's really questioning that. But Alabama A&M is a different story because Ed Reed has a relationship with HBCUs. He has a history with HBCUs, and it's not the prettiest of histories. It's not super ugly, but it's not the prettiest. Let's recap where we were. Man, this was just what, a year ago? No. Yeah, this is just a year ago, I believe. Gosh, it feels like it was at least 2, but I don't think that. Oh, yeah, it was. It was before Woody got hired. So it was 2 years ago. Ed Reed was in line to be the Bethune-Cookman head coach. It had never been announced, but he was on campus. It was reported, heavily reported, beyond reported. It was true. It was true. They just broke off the agreement, and he was never introduced as the head coach. And what came from that is basically he went up there and he bashed Bethune-Cookman, and not just the university, but how the university was caring for the campus. And then when it all happened and they decided to change their mind, Then he went on for a while and he was ranting about it. Uh, I acknowledge all of my biases up front. I love Ed Reed. Ed Reed was one of my favorite players growing up. Like, he was an icon, somebody that I looked up to, and it was a huge motivating factor when I was playing the game. Even though I didn't play safety, he was a huge motivating factor for me, right? So I want to acknowledge that off rip, that naturally impacts some of the ways that I look at him. That naturally makes me want to give him a little bit of grace. But even when I take my bias cap off, and I did in trying to form this topic, the reason I think he deserves another shot is because look at why Bethune-Cookman wanted him, and then look at why Bethune-Cookman no longer wanted him. Look at that, right? If we're talking about Ed Reed and whether or not he deserves another shot to be an HBCU head coach, look at the reason that Bethune-Cookman wanted him, and then look at the reason that Bethune-Cookman didn't want him. Let's start off with the obvious. The reason they wanted him is because look at how intelligent of a player that he's always been praised to be. It's not just, oh, I had to know. Peyton Manning will tell you, Tom Brady will tell you, Bill Belichick will tell you. These are three of the greatest at their profession telling you, we try to stay away from him. He had the intelligence. One of the best stories is how he ended up intercepting Peyton Manning by playing a coverage wrong all year. It's an athletic ability mixed with a mental ability that he has. He was a leader on the team. Every box that you need to check outside of coaching resume, outside of actual experience, it made sense for Ed Reed to be a coach and see why you would want to desire him. And that doesn't even get to talk about his marketability. So it's obvious why Bethune-Cookman would want Ed Reed. Why do they not want Ed Reed now? Because when things weren't going the way he felt like they should be going, he hopped on social media and he talked about it. And that right there is the problem. But if that's the issue, I think that's easily correctable. Bethune-Cookman and Ed Reed didn't work out because Ed Reed got on social media and publicly aired out his soon-to-be employers. That is correctable in my opinion. I don't think it should be difficult to tell him or get him to put the phone down. And if we have a problem, let's have a conversation. There was clearly a lack of relationship between him and the Bethune-Cookman higher-ups that if you are going to hire Ed Reed, you have to possess, because it's in the back of your mind, will he air me out if something doesn't go his way? Not even if I'm totally wrong, but if something doesn't go his way. But if you establish a good rapport, that, to me, that concern subsides dramatically. The reason a lot of people don't want Ed Reed is not because he aired out Bethune-Cookman. It's because of everything that happened afterwards. I'm here to say I do not believe that Ed Reed is mentally unstable. I know that he had, and maybe I'm just getting on my horse right now. I think personally, when dudes are emotional, when dudes feel a certain kind of way, everybody turns against it. That's how I feel. Like, if you're crying, I seen it happen with CJ Stroud. All right, you're emotional. We don't know if you can lead. When you get angry, like, these things are real. When people feel actual passionate emotions, let me not even, I think it happens in men, but we just kind of, as a society, say, oh, women can't do this because of that. Like, we don't even let them showcase the emotional side. We don't even let them showcase this. It's just, oh, you're a woman, so you're going to have this. Let's get you out of here. When we think about leadership, we think about being stoic. When we think about when we think about being a leader, we think about straight focus, nothing over here, nothing over there, nothing phases you. I don't think that is the only way of leadership. I don't think being the soldier who never loses composure, in the words of Eminem, is the only way to be a leader. It is a way, but it's not the only way. Real emotion that is displayed can be a form of leadership. To me, Ed Reed was passionate, and I think he let the passion bubble over. I think he should have let it die a little bit earlier than he did. I didn't agree with taking it to social media either. The only thing that I hated about the Ed Reed fiasco is the routes he took. I didn't want him to continue talking about it for as long as he did after the Bethune-Cookman job was no longer in his grasp. And I didn't like going to social media in the first place. But what I did see was a great display of passion. What I did see was a great display of care and love for the kids who are about to be his players. These are aspects that I do want in a coach. So if you're asking me if Ed Reed deserves another chance, I say yes, because the things that he did, I do think are easily correctable. I do think with conversations and with actual relationships, the idea of him picking up his phone and going to social media to rant is less likely if we have a relationship that you can come talk to me. It's different like that. But overall, I can tell he cares, and I think he has the mind for it. So look at the reasons they wanted him. Look at the reasons they didn't want him. They wanted him because of not just marketability, but also the intellect and everything that comes with the game, the leadership, all of those things that we've seen him display over his career. The reason they didn't want him is because he went on social media and blasted the whole campus, the whole university for their lack of leadership and things that aggravated him. I look at the negative and I can find positive in it. I look at the positive and I don't see any negative. I think that he deserves a shot. I really do, because at the end of the day, he cared. And caring ain't all you got to do. But the care and the passion is what allows me to excuse some of the behavior and thinking it won't happen again and hoping it won't happen again. But we have to have that conversation. I'm not in them rooms. I'm not in them rooms. I can only speculate. Speaking of speculating, that was one of the things they was knocking me for. They was killing me for my speculation about DeSean Jackson. I want to respond to that while also talking about the floodgates that have been opened as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by I appreciate you for hearing me out. We did a whole lot of moving and shaking, and we changed things around. Matter of fact, segment 3 from what was supposed to be today's episode right now is going to be segment 3 on tomorrow's episode about the whole JUCO ruling and how that has impacted the SWAC already, with Alcorn losing Malachi Bailey, but how I think HBCUs can use this ruling to their advantage moving forward. That'll be segment 3 tomorrow, but we'll open it up with a little bit of a greater conversation about Sam Shade to Alabama A&M, because I want to break this down in more depth. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.